All right, I suppose of all the figures of speech that you might have been familiar with, your understanding of irony has to come from Alanis Morissette. It's like rain on your wedding day. It's a free ride when you've already paid. It's the good advice that you just didn't take. Who would have thought? It figures. That's irony. And she does a great job in that song of lacing together all kinds of ironic. The guy who is afraid to fly crashes down on his first flight. She does a great job of using irony to communicate sometimes what life is like. And so I appreciate her lyrics in that song, introducing you at least to the figure of speech called irony. Again, our figures of speech help us to underscore the emotional response. Just like in Alanis Morissette's song, we're not meant to experience confusion. We're meant to say, you know what, that is kind of what life is like. It's a little ironic the way things turn out. So the audience has an emotional response rather than a search for information sort of thing. Here's a definition of irony. It's using words that normally signify the opposite thing, typically for humorous or emphatic effect, or the casting of a word into an obviously inappropriate context. So let's look at some biblical examples along the way. One of my favorites, this is Elijah on Mount Carmel, and he stands alone as a prophet against the prophets of Baal, who are dancing around all morning long, all the way till midday, trying to get Baal to send down fire and burn up their sacrifices. And they're dancing around, and as time wears on, they're getting more and more frantic. They're beginning to cut themselves and do things that if they can do anything to get Baal to answer. And so Elijah begins to mock them. And this is how he does irony. Cry louder, for he is a god, right? I grant you that he's a god, so maybe he's just hard of hearing. Do you see how that? Elijah is not saying Baal exists. He is saying in ironic fashion, you believe he exists, so he must answer soon. So the literal interpretation of the irony is, you need to cry louder. His intention, though, is just to tell them to stop praying. He's just mocking them for trusting in a false god. So that's Elijah. It's a interesting way that prophets sometimes try to communicate. People are so hard of hearing for so long that maybe the only thing that gets through is mocking. That seems to be the case with Elijah, and it seems to be the case with Micaiah as well. Ahab and the king from the south are considering going to war together. And so the king from the south looks at Ahab, and Ahab brings in all of his great prophets, and everybody says, of course, this battle is going to be successful. So the king of the south begins to be a little bit suspicious. And so he says, do you have anybody else who speaks? And Ahab says, well, there is one, Micaiah, but he never says anything good about me. Which is ironic in itself. You're looking for the truth as long as they say good stuff. So here is Micaiah, and they go and find him, and they drag him into the presence of these two kings. And Micaiah looks at them and he says, go and be successful. That's the same advice that the false prophets are giving. What's the deal? Well, Micaiah is saying, ironically, you know you're not supposed to. The intention is that Ahab will reject the advice and go to his doom in battle. Do you see how that? So the irony there in both these cases is a prophet amazed at the unfaithfulness, amazed at the rebellion of man, the prophets of Baal or King Ahab. And they're looking at and trying to deliver a message that might somehow wake them up, and doesn't work out all that well. So that's irony. Find more instances of irony in E.W. Bullinger. You can look up the term irony, and then you can look for the verses in which irony appears and go check them out for yourself. Thanks for hanging out. Look forward to having you back.